Welcome to Explore Parenting Growth, the channel where we help parents confidently guide their children towards success in life and career. Each episode, we bring you real conversations, proven strategies, and inspiring stories to strengthen your parenting journey. My guest today is Eden Carlton. She is the mother of Harriet Mariama Leilani Coates IV, a young woman who has played soccer for Team USA in Holland as a ninth grader and now ranks among the top competitors in the world in women's steel longsword, part of the growing sport of historical European martial arts. Eden raised her daughter as a single mother and helped discover strength, confidence, and excellence in spaces where few people look like her. Today, we're asking Eden to share her journey, the challenges, the breakthroughs, and the lessons that every parent can take away about nurturing their child's unique potential. So, Eden, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And how I'd like to start out and just ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself. And we know obviously we're going to get into your parenting and about your daughter, but just tell us a little bit about yourself as well before we start there.
Sure. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own consulting business. I'm also an ordained minister who began an organization called Between Churches, which is 100% digital space for people who are questioning their faith or have just left the church. An opportunity to have a soft place to land for them to ask questions and to seek whatever their next step is. And I also am a digital creator. So you'll find me on the socials as Eden with a smile.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you so much for that. How I'd like to start just the questions and just ask you to take us back to the beginning.
Mm.
What was life like raising Mariama as a single mother? And what helped you to stay grounded in those during those early challenges?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as a teenager, I had the belief that all you need is love to raise children. Imagine my surprise when it happened. Yeah, you need a lot more than just love. So, um, it really for me the challenges started literally at the beginning because I had a very high risk pregnancy. I had fibroids that were growing along with my daughter while I was pregnant. And so that was the first really big challenge. Praise God, she's here, she's fine, everything is okay. But then the next thing for me really was around security, financial and physical security, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to make sure that, we always had the 3, a house over our head, a roof over our heads, transportation to get back and forth to work, and food on the table, clothing. I figured we figure out because you can always, go to the Salvation Army or whatever. I figured that out. But that financial and physical, even where I lived, I was used to coming in and out. And if there was something that was going to happen, it was just me. But once I had my daughter, that really changed. And it was making sure that we were in a place that I felt was safe, that we didn't have to sort of look over our shoulders when we were coming in and out. And then the other challenge was education because when I actually moved, outside of the city of Philadelphia, the neighborhood I moved to, the school district literally was in the paper the day I moved about some horrible thing that happened and talks of violence against children, child on child violence in school. So it was about finding she had a really good foundation in education leading up to them, then rather because she had a Montessori education, right? Which was right across the street from where I lived. And it keys in on learning as a love for learning, education as a love for learning, not education as a way to make sure you pass the test. So some of those challenges financially, um, just physically making sure we're eating food on the table every day, uh, at times seemed very daunting. But the things that really grounded me were, 1, my focus again on we. So I didn't just focus on what my needs were. I made sure my life changed as soon as I found out I was pregnant. It was always a preparation for we, the both of us. What will meet both our needs? So I know no early '90s music because all I knew the early '90s is when she was born, was Barney. That's all that's all I knew, right? Because my choice was to if she's gonna listen to something, we're listening it together. I'm checking the lyrics of what she's gonna listen to, right? That it's not inappropriate for her. And then, of course, my relationship with God, because there was a period of time, particularly during the actual pregnancy part, because I even had to be hospitalized, I had to have a nurse check on me every day. I always used to say the phrase, "It's just you and me, God," because there was no one to go to appointments with me. There was no one who kinda stood by my side and make sure I was okay. I had to do that myself. But then there were family and friends, and this is the 3rd thing that grounded me, who would step up, right, even if I didn't ask. So let's say we took a trip to the beach. My friend would say, "Eden, close your eyes and take a nap. I'll watch her while you do that." So those 3 things really, excuse me, grounded me in the ability to see that no matter what challenge was faced, there was an opportunity to overcome those challenges.
Got you. Thank you for sharing that. Yep.
Hey, my pleasure.
Um, how did Mariama first fall in love with sports? It's something I was very curious about and wanted to know. And kind of a second part to that is what did you notice about her that made you want to nurture that passion?
Mhm. So you're not really gonna believe this, but it all started, right, with a arm farting competition. Okay, okay. It seems really odd, but that's really how it started. So my nephew was at the house, and they were very, very little. They were probably 4 or 5, somewhere around there, but he had learned how to use his hand, to make a fart sound with his arm. And so, because he could do it, and when she tried, she couldn't do it. She went into a mindset that boys were better than girls. And at that point, I was like, "Of course, we've got to stop that thinking." We can't
Yeah.
continue with that mindset. Even if I talked about how people are different and if you practiced, you could probably do it yourself. It then led me to so when I grew up, it was music, dance, right? The arts. But I thought it would be better to put her in sports because at that age, you played with boys and girls. You didn't just play by yourself. So it would show her that she is just as good as boys in playing sports. And that literally is, as you know, has lasted to today, right? It doesn't give her any kind of fear or feeling less than to do that. So it started with the arm farting competition, and
Mm.
making sure that she had a love for herself, right? Of herself and for herself. But she's also a very creative and a very curious person, right? And she's willing to try things. So it led to her, doing baseball or doing soccer and really liking it, right? She really liked it. So that's sort of where the love came from. I think she's in love with the exploration part, and then if it turns out really good, then she's, like, "Oh, yes, this is great," and that's been her niche, for around sports. I always say that the other part is she doesn't mind being different than the people she's around, right? So I saw a meme once that said, "Your child be a Batman in a sea of princesses," and that's literally who she is. My daughter is nothing like me. She didn't do the whole, "I'm gonna spend 20 hours on the telephone talking to my friends," she was doing other things. She loved to read, she loved history. She just was a different person, and those were the things that really helped me to notice, and it wasn't just a passion for sports, but a passion for trying things and learning things. Mhm, mhm.
Um, when she made Team USA for soccer in Holland as a ninth grader, as I said earlier, what went through your mind as both her mom and honestly, I'm sure her biggest supporter?
Absolutely, I'm the number 1 cheerleader. Absolutely. But to be honest with you, it was stress. It was stress first for me because that wasn't free. That had to be paid
Right.
for, right? And so it was me trying to figure out I had some of the money easily accessible, and they talked about fundraising the rest, but I was not comfortable with that, so it was a strong, "Let's shift the budget so we can save to make that happen," and follow those things, and then the second thing is my baby was gonna be out of the country without me in ninth grade. I that thing stressed me for a little bit. So the initial response was that, but then it was I knew how much she would enjoy the experience because she likes to try things, and she was super excited. So that excitement really drove me from just stressing about it to like, yeah, this is gonna be really a great experience. And I call her Dora the Explorer, even though I've never seen the show, but because
Mm.
that's what she loves. She loves to explore. And Holland was one of those things that really helped her to get there. She tried a lot of different things and got to really expand her world as a result. So, as a mom, it was stress. As the cheerleader, it was yay, yay.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mhm,
Now, Mariama later pursued historical European martial arts,
mhm.
which obviously that is a rare choice, especially for an African American woman, not even just man, but woman. What made you encourage her to explore something so unconventional? And how did you help her believe she belonged there?
Right. That's a really good question, and I really initial my initial thought is, really, that was all her, believe it or not. It wasn't really me, and part of it was, I think, connected to the fact that she had already moved 3,000 miles away from me, right? So, it really came up about because she always wanted to fence. She's done a number of different sports, but she always wanted to fence, but I could never make those classes happen. I couldn't scheduling wise make it happen. She also loves history, absolutely loves history. So the combination of something that she always wanted to try and the love of history. I mean, on one vacation, she was reading a textbook while we were sitting by the pool. And the waiter said, "Oh, is that your homework?" I'm like, "No, she reads those things for fun." She enjoys those for fun, right? So I think part of it is her personality. I call her Switzerland. She's neutral and she gets along with all different kinds of people. I think part of it is her exposure and her experiences that she's willing to try things she was always reading at the time, and her ability to see she had moved to a new place and she wanted to make friends. How can I make friends here? And that was the entry. She saw something online, I think, and that was her entry. She wanted to try the fencing and move. Now, on my part, I'm gonna take slight just a little bit. I'm not taking all the credit because that really was her. But I think it was a sort of a core foundation in our household was expanding the world for me was done by my parents through taking me to a world's fair and seeing it's a small world, which opened my mind to all of these different cultures, right? And all of these opportunities to do things and even speak in languages that I had never learned before. And so as a result, it was sort of ingrained in me that, oh, my daughter, absolutely. So at the time, they used to have a series of books that were Disney based that were based on each country, like, the crew going to each country and what they experienced. So I would bring those books in. I would purchase, it was like getting 'em one each month. So I would have her do that. We would go to museums, especially when she was young because, she got in for free. So we did things where she could get in for free. And then I think it was reinforced by her very early education, the Montessori method, which again brings learning into your real life activities. So learning how to clean a table in a certain way helps you with your reading, right? Because of way how you're moving your hand back and forth. It helps you with reading. It helps with all kinds of things. So I think it was reinforced there. And then we just explored. So we started with baseball and softball, and she did soccer, she did volleyball, She did tennis, she did basketball and archery. So all of those things except for fencing, which she then was driven to do later. I think it's just making that opportunity available and being open to allow the world to expand.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, saying that you allowing the opportunity to be there and allowing her world to expand and see what she can do, regardless of who she is or what she's doing, the world is open to her. That I will appreciate that. Um, what challenges did she face and how did you guide her through maybe moments of insecurity or feeling like she maybe felt as or being underestimated? Um, how did you help her through those things or challenges if they came up?
Yeah, certainly they have come up. They absolutely have come up. Because even though she is Switzerland, even though she can move in spaces, and still interact with people, she has social anxiety, right? So she, may become overwhelmed. So it was, tools to be able to, okay, you're at this concert, you're feeling overwhelmed as people are streaming out of the venue. Find a quiet corner just to stand in the corner away from where the flow of people are. Those kinds of tips and tools, resource. And to be honest, one of the greatest resources is to just answer the phone, right? Answer the phone when she calls if she has a question about something. But I think her biggest challenge has not been people or, outside of her, people who underestimate her because she gets a fire. She gets a fire when you underestimate her. It's like, "Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna come back even stronger." It's when she underestimates herself, right? When she diminishes her success, for herself. For example, with the HEMA ratings, HEMA is the abbreviation for Historical European Martial Arts. She will look at that being in the top 100 in the world, and she will look at that and say, "Ah, I really can't do it," because she's comparing herself to the number 1, person. She's comparing herself to the person she just fought. And the biggest goal for me is when I hear her underestimating herself, to get her to move to a position of seeing things in reality, and in reality, you are a person who has done quite well with this sport, right? And the other part was one of the biggest lessons for any parent, I guess, but single parents even, because you tend to have this really close connection with your child. I'm not saying other, two-parent homes don't have that, but um is handling disappointment and your dreams being deferred, and how that impacts your thoughts of yourself and your environment. Um And how do you navigate that? Because it's a fact of life. It's gonna come at some time. There's gonna be a disappointment. There's gonna be what you dreamed of happening didn't quite turn out the way that you thought it would happen, or it didn't look exactly how you anticipated. And that really takes listening. Listening is very, very important. And then responding. And where I have to watch myself is not being the directive mom, right? It's the coach and the mentor rather than, "Well, you should go and do so and so and so and so." Because trust me, I get called out on that. Instead of saying should, "You should, mom," why don't you find another way of saying that? So I get called out on that, because it becomes, as if, you know, you don't see your child as capable of handling it when you're saying, "Well, just do A, B, C, and D." But that navigating that disappointment, that navigating that dreams deferred piece,
Yeah.
that's a big piece. That's a big piece. Yeah.
Yep,
Mhm.
I totally agree. And also, I would say just our the words that we use are very important. You mentioned, saying should, or maybe that's just not saying should, suggesting it another way can make all the difference for our children, for getting them to listen to us. Anyway.
Absolutely. And even with that, there's gonna be times they're gonna make choices we would prefer they did not, because we experienced it in one way, they experienced it in another. And this is where there's a stark difference between me and my daughter, of course. We all are a product of the household we grew up in. So I'm expecting that she grew up in the household I grew up in, but she did not. She grew up in my household. And if she grew up in my household, things were different than the household that I grew up in. And so as a result, she's a different person with a different viewpoint. And one example I'll really give there is it was a requirement. She knew at 5 and 6 years old, you are going to college, and now let me say here, college isn't for everyone, I get that, but my expectation at the time was that you're gonna go to college and you have no option, you must study abroad. That's your option because that was the most revelatory experience for me, was studying abroad to see and live in a culture where it was so different and recognize that as people of the United States, we were like wealthier than 75% of the rest of the world. When I lived in Spain, I couldn't even use hot water. I could use hot water 1 day a week for 15 minutes. But when she went to go do her study abroad, she was based in Germany. She was going to Austria. They were also based there for a little while in Italy. And she had the opportunity to do a day trip or a trip to Paris. And unfortunately, she lost the all-day card that got her on transportation, or someone pickpocketed her, and she called me at work, and we were in an open space, so I had to go in a staircase because she was so angry. She was so upset about, "And I hate Paris," and I said, "Let me tell you something, you're in Paris, okay? You're in Paris, okay? The Eiffel Tower, croissants, you are in Paris.
Yeah.
That is a temporary bump in the road. Shift past that and enjoy the rest of what you have there. You're only gonna be there for a day or 2. Enjoy that." And she said, "Mom, whatever, these countries, they're the same just as the United States, their cities and all of that." So she did not have a revelatory experience in her study abroad. Why? Because we had already been out of the country several times.
Gotcha.
Why? Because it's a city is a city. Whereas for me, I had never been out of the country by the time I had gone there. And it was just fascinating. And the world had changed in that time frame. So again, our, as parents, our children are not an extension of ourselves. And as a result, they will experience things and do things very differently than what we would do it. And that should be okay.
What values or parenting principles do you feel made the biggest difference to drive for her drive and her resilience?
Mhm, mhm. That's a good question, and I think some of the core values are some of the things I said. Listening is really important, and there were times, where there were things she was saying that were about me that were really hard to hear. I should say about her experience of me that were really hard to hear, but I had to listen, right? I had to listen because what was more important to me was to get past the acting out of the feelings she had. Let me hear what's actually happening. What is going on? That this is the output, right? What's going on? So it's hard to hear. And in the beginning, I would defend myself and then I stopped very quickly. So I think that point of just listening, right? Without judgment as best we can, just listening, even when it's hard to hear, is critical. I think also, again, you're gonna hear me say this a billion times, exploration, right? Trying things. And it's not just having your child try it. And I don't mean overscheduling children by, okay, you've got violin, 2 to 3 here, you've got sports here, over here, then you're gonna go and do this community service thing. I'm not talking about that kind of thing, but just the willingness to try something different and to be somewhere different, I think is important. I think it helps to expand the world um, in your child's eyes. I think it makes the world broader than just the community you live in or just your family, and that people live in different ways, and there's a whole world to explore. So those are some of the very key values and principles, and I'll add another one that you love what is it? Love your neighbor as yourself, and you treat people with respect. Because we could go stomping through this world like, a bull in a china shop, but we want to go not as, entitled people. We want to go forth as people who want to be in community with other people. Does that make sense? To be in community with
Yeah.
other people. Mhm.
Looking back, what would you say to other single parents raising kids with big, non-traditional dreams?
Mhm. And I think the big first thing would be, and if you already have a child who you know has non-traditional dreams, is just to accept your child for who they are, right? Embrace the uniqueness of their child. And I'll emphasize again, the as a teenager, I was on the phone all the time. I was constantly chatting with my friends, whereas my daughter needed space. She likes interaction and enjoys the interaction, but once that's done, she needs space to recoup. She needs time to recoup. So embrace that. Don't I wouldn't reforce her back into, you know, the fray, if you will, you know.
Yeah.
So embrace the uniqueness of your child and really understand sort of where they're coming from and what they're doing. And I think for those who may have more than one child, please don't compare your children. Don't compare one to the other or expect just because the one, and as an oldest child, this is me, hey, you've got all the responsibility or you've got the response. Make sure you're always checking and looking out for this one over here. Try to avoid that if you can, or at least if you can devote individual time to each child so that they know that they're seen in your eyes, not just seen as the oldest that's going to take care of the youngest or the youngest who's always the cutest. That again, there's a balance there. And then I would say, like we talked about the should, that we encourage but don't push, right? Just to encourage. Hey, that's what you're going to do. Now, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example here. My daughter,
Yeah.
she does, fencing tournaments, and I should explain what HEMA is, or Historical European Martial Arts. It's fencing like you would see in the Olympics, right? It's fencing with swords, but it's swords like King Arthur in King Arthur's day. It's the big, thicker one swords. So, it takes some strength and stamina to be able to lift that and
Yeah.
do the things that you need to do. So she looks for tournaments all over the country, which she does quite a few all over the country, but she also wanted to go to Finland, right? So she was in Finland in the beginning of the year, and then she wanted to take a trip to Estonia. Well, Mama Bear's like security thing. Why are you gonna go out of the country? Do you know how close Estonia is to Russia? You should such and such and such and such. As she's going for her flight, she stops in New York to take a day so she can see some Broadway shows. There's a snowstorm. "Oh, stay in the hotel. It's unsafe." This is Mama Bear. But she's like, "Okay, yeah." And of course, she's going to do it anyway. She's like,
Right.
"Calm down, calm down." So it's those things of when it comes to, I have to recognize my own stress and anxiety, and I should not be putting that on her. She is making good choices. She makes good decisions. And I shouldn't have to question that because of my own anxiety. So I think self-awareness is a very good tool in parenting. If you are aware of what your triggers are, if you're aware of what some of your childhood hurts were or some of the trauma you experienced and how that plays out in your relationship with your children, are you anticipating that they should have a life like you had when you were young? I think self-awareness is important as well.
I'm going to wrap up with this question. Um,
Mhm.
when you see your daughter ranked among the best in the world, what does that say to you about what's possible for her and for you as a mother?
Well, I'm definitely proud of that, right?
Yeah.
Definitely proud of it. But the thing that's behind that ranking is for her a conflict, right? The conflict is I can either drive myself to be the most competitive and fierce competitor in the sport, and my ranking will go up accordingly, right? Because I'm focused only on where I'm ranking in doing those things. But her joy comes from just participating in tournaments. And I can tell you that she does things in those tournaments she's never done before. She's competed with different swords that she's never lifted or touched in her lifetime. But she's at the tournament level, right, doing these things. But she finds great joy in doing that. She does not find joy in just competing for ranking. And there are a number of people who are in the top few spots that she gets to, compete against on a somewhat regular basis. And she makes a decision sort of as she's going to the tournament. Am I going to care about what my ranking is when this is done? Or am I going to come here, give my best in what I'm excited about doing and leave fulfilled? So I think for me, the possibilities don't lie in the drive for achievement. The possibilities lie in the exploration of what you're looking for, right? So that it's aligned with your goals and dreams. And especially that it's going to happen in your own time and you don't have to compare yourself to anyone else about how fast they got there. You're at your own pace. It's not really a race. If you're competing against yourself. How did I do? Can I do better? Am I giving my best? If I'm not, I need to give my best next time. So the thing that makes me see the possibilities is not the ranking, which of course I'm very proud about, right? But it is in seeing her shift from a mindset of underestimating herself into a mindset of, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I got this. I can do this. I can handle this. So the possibilities for her, of course, come first to my mind. For me, what does it mean it is possible? I used to say to her all the time, the world is your oyster, right? So literally the treasure, you could put it right in your hand because the pearl or the treasure is right there. The world is your oyster. But now I say more of things like you can do whatever you put your heart, your hands, and your mind to. Um, just have confidence in yourself that you can do this, right? She is a person of faith, so of course I'll also ask her, well, did you pray about that? But it is really that conflict within ourselves of making sure we're confident, and that to me expands the possibilities because that also was a phrase I would say, explore the possibilities, just explore it. It doesn't have to always lead to, success, and I have a very different definition of success than most people do. Success is not wealth. Wealth is the accumulation of things, right? It is not success. Um, you can have people who have a collection issue, right, of things they like to collect. Um, that doesn't mean that they're wealthy, even if you can go and sell those things off for $10,000. It doesn't mean that they're wealthy, and it doesn't mean that they're successful. Success is that you set a goal for something and you achieve that goal. And with the level of our children in this day and age and the things that they encounter, sometimes for some of our children, that's just getting up and getting a shower, right? For some of our children, that's achieving getting our diploma. For some of our children, it's going to what is it? Tech schools, like if you want to be a plumber or if you want to be an electrician, those kinds of trade schools, that's what it is. That's where the possibilities lie, is at how committed we are to be our authentic selves. And the more we live in our most authentic way, the more possibilities expand for all of us.
Absolutely. unfortunately, we just came to the end of our time. But Eden, I must tell you, I very much enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for your honesty, your openness, your vulnerability. I know that many people who watch this video will really learn, grow, and be encouraged by it. So thank you so much again for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate
Eh,
the opportunity.
No worries. Thank you. And as we say at Explore Growth, parenting is a journey. Explore your growth. Thank you.